You know, if Morbius is setting records, then it must be a good auction for comic books. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle. And in this one, we got a little bit of a market report to do. Comiclink is having its featured auction right now. We're just one day through it, but there have been some incredible sales here on the secondary market. And so in this video, I wanted to do a little bit of a market recap because, you know, on Comiclink, these sales actually just sort of get lost into the comic book ether. They're not actually reported onto the pricing services, but there's a lot of world records going on. And I think for scientific reasons, it's important to report on them. Now, while I'm doing this for you guys to give you guys information during the course of the auction, it's still going on. And there's actually a lot of books that I'm trying to bid on. So, you know, if you guys could just like not actually go over to Comiclink and just watch the video, I would appreciate that. But of course, before I get into it, if you guys could like, comment, subscribe, I appreciate it. Help support the channel doing those things. But let us get into this video here today. Now, I did pull out a few different books that I thought would be interesting to talk about. I actually have a lot of them, so this might be kind of a long video, so bear with me, guys. Summer Featured auction. This, of course, is one of their more premier auctions, you know, where they kind of aggregate all of the bigger books, a lot of, you know, mega keys, a lot of Golden Age, a lot of original art. And so I thought it'd be appropriate to start with some Golden Age. Here we have an All-American Comics number 16, the first appearance of Green Lantern, the Alan Scott Green Lantern. It has been a long time since I've seen this book actually go up for auction. So it was really, really cool to see what this would get. And also, on top of that, what makes this one even more special is you guys can see right there, gold label, signed by Sheldon Moldoff on 7/11. Or I should say July of 2011. Sheldon Moldoff, of course, doing the cover art for this. And what's unique about this particular book, even though it's a 1/8, this is the only signed copy that actually features Sheldon Moldoff on it. I think that there's actually 2 other signed copies, but this is the only one with his signature. So the only book in existence for an already pretty, you know, scarce book that has that signature. So it's pretty cool to see that. I mean, you guys can see 33 universal copies for this one, 69 total graded. You guys can actually see, you know, only one sale for a resto copy, 8.5, 65,000 in 2012. One sale in 2021, a resto copy, 6.0, 43,000. And then you have to go all the way back to, you know, 2020, where there was a 0.5 copy one for sale. And then, you know, 9/2020. That was like kind of the last time you had a genuine blue label sell, and that was $72,000. So what did this one get here? Well, if you guys happen to notice, the number is a little small, $61,000 for this book right here. A very big number for the first appearance of the original Green Lantern. Really cool to see that one. All right, next book I wanted to talk about is this Blue Bolt number 116 with a CVA exceptional sticker, highest graded, 1 of 2. And the reason I kind of want to bring this up is, you know, right here, look at this price, $9,032. That is the world record price for this book. I mean, obviously, this is a top of census. Anytime usually you have a top of census Golden Age book, I mean, chances are, you know, you're going to have a record sale for it because, it, you know, chances are, again, that it's been a long time since this book is actually sold. So just by the nature of, you know, the rate of inflation, like there's going to be people spending more money on it. But this one is cool because it's a classic LB Cole cover. Or actually, let me backtrack. Is it a classic LB Cole cover? I'm not so sure, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about it, is that LB Cole covers, even his sort of second tier books, are now starting to get, you know, that hot attention. Obviously, you know, a lot of the LB Cole covers that, you know, have gotten at people's price ranges, you know, are just, you know, selling at tremendous amounts of money. Whereas this one, you know, this one was actually pretty affordable. You know, the last couple sales for this one, I mean, you can actually see that it was actually under 4 figures in a lot of instances, a 3.0 for $660, a 5.5 for $900. So, you know, fairly affordable if you want to get your hands on a book that is done by an artist like this. But as you guys can see, $9,000 for the top of census. So I thought that was kind of interesting to bring up. All right, next book I wanted to talk about here is Champion Comics number 9. And what is the significance of this? Well, this is actually the first cover work done by the combination of Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. Isn't that pretty cool? Like, first artist work, I feel like is so underrated. And, you know, take all pop cultural movie spec aside, so long as comics are a, you know, cultural thing that people want to own, and if they have a certain history within that culture, like, artist work is always going to be significant in that sense. I mean, Joe Simon, Jack Kirby, first collaboration. This one, of course, being the pedigree copy, the Mile High collection, in a 9/6 white pages. And it's selling for $17,750. I mean, the Mile High collection had some really nice books, that is for sure. But this one, kind of a fun cover. I mean, you just look at this. You could see the Kirby Simon-ness all over this book right here. And if we go into the the census for this thing, I thought that this was kind of crazy. Only 10 universal copies, 13 total graded. This is a book that is legit rare. We can actually give this one the legit distinction that it is actually rare, their first collaboration together. And I thought that this was interesting too, because I was not too aware of this book overall. And we see the last couple sales, here in August of 2024, we had a restored copy, a 3.0, sell for only $870. I feel like that was a great buy. There's only 13 of these things. That's pretty crazy. Then you go to 2020 or 2022, there's a 3.0 copy that sold for $500. So these are some good deals, even though they're restored books. You go back to 2017 and you can see that a 9.4 sold for $13,000. So this right here did set the world record, $17,000. A really interesting, cool book. I mean, I understand maybe it's not the most exciting cover in terms of what people like to have on covers, Good Girl, Bondage, Nazi, that type of stuff, but still a cool book regardless. Now, this book right here, Champion Comics number 10, that sold for $25,000, which is also the single highest graded, also the Mile High pedigree copy, also from the collection of John Burke, who is a very notable collector within the hobby. This one actually sold for $25,000, even though it's their second collaboration together. But one of the reasons why it sold for more is, well, what do you see on the cover? You got the bondage right there. So very interesting that even, that this is the second collaboration. At the end of the day, comic collectors are visual creatures. It's still about the visual aesthetics. It's still about those covers. And this is why this one got a higher price tag, which, again, is still a really cool book in its own right and is actually the world record for that particular copy. All right, last Golden Age book I want to talk about and just give a little bit of a highlight to is this one right here, Detective Comics number 122. And what is the significance of this? Well, this, of course, is the first Catwoman cover. A really cool book right there. I absolutely love this thing. Of course, Selena has other appearances, and you have Batman 3. It's the first appearance of her with the cat mask and stuff like that. But when it comes to sort of the iconic version of the character and them being on the cover, this is that book. This is that one that's a lot of collectors like to have, and for that reason, this one sold for $9,800, which is not necessarily the record price for that. I mean, this isn't the top of Census book; it's a 7.0, so it's on the higher end of the spectrum. But I think this is the third highest price ever paid for this book. All right, next book I wanted to talk about is actually this one here, and this one is more of just kind of a funny one that made me feel like talking about it. This is ASM number 14 in the CGC 9.0 that was signed by Stan Lee, sold for $12,028. So a little bit lower than, some of the prior sales, even that are not signed for this. The reason why I wanted to talk about this one is let's all take a moment to look at that signature placement. Oh, Stan Lee, shout out to Stan Lee. Rest in peace. Obviously, the most notable figure in all of comic book, creation. But when it came to signatures, if you didn't do the thing where you kind of instructed him, where to sign, you get the bag, you cut out the little square and you kind of say, hey, I'd like him to sign right here. Stan was always just going to sign right over top of the characters. Look at that Stan Lee signature, just right on top of Spider-Man. I mean, it's still cool, but Stan, if you just went diagonally down here to the right, this is the perfect area to sign it. You know what I mean? Just right under Spider-Man, a little bit off to the right would have been perfect. But man, if you're somebody out there who likes signed books, I highly recommend you do that little trick. That you kind of instruct the artist where to sign, makes it easier for them, and you're typically going to be happier about the results. But I'm sure that whoever ended up selling this thing was very, very happy with the $12,000 price, because as I can see right here from Go Collect, this was a book that was purchased in 9 of 2016 for $4,000. And there you see it, the same book with the same signature right over top of Spider-Man, 9.0, white pages. And so yeah, this person had a pretty good come up, selling for $8,000 more than they bought it for, even though that is less than some of the prior sales. All right, next up here is ASM number 50 in a CGC 9.8 Rocky Mountain pedigree, highest graded, 1 of 8, first appearance of Kingpin, and what many people believe to be the best John Romita cover ever. And look at this, guys. $125,000. That is the world record for this book, which is interesting because this is the world record, yet on Comiclink, it doesn't go into the annals of comic selling history. It's not canon, if you guys are familiar with that term, but this is the world record. This is the world record. I mean, I know that it is canon, and it's like Comiclink will, they'll wear it on their sleeve, but it's sometimes a lot of these sales are often forgotten, which is why it's important to do videos like this. But as you guys can see, the previous sale to this was back in November of 2022 that sold for $99,000. And then there was a sale in 2020 in May that sold for $55,000. And again, like we already established, only 8 copies here at the top of Census. So this right here, absolutely shattering the record. $125,000, $30,000 more than the prior record sale for this. So really, really cool to see that, and a beautiful copy. And hey, it's a old label in a 9.8, 9.9 candidate, perhaps, crack and press. Although it looks like the wrap is a little bit misaligned down there. Does that bother you guys? If you guys are 9.8 buyers, does that wrap kind of take it away from you? Let me know in the comments. All right, next up here, speaking of world records, I started the video with a little bit of joke on this one. ASM 101 CGC 9.8 near mint first appearance of Morbius the Living Vampire. It's Morbin time. $28,138. That right there is the world record. Let's take a look. 9.8s have 39 on the census, 6,200 total graded. We can see that the prior record was actually 26,400 in April of 2023. There was also a sale in June of 2020 that was also 26,400. So 2 times this book had tied its own record. And, you can see that's a lot higher than what this thing was selling for back in 2019, $7,000. That was before the movie hype and all of that stuff. But this one right here, $28,000, a new record. And that to me is kind of like the big story. Here we are with comic books, people kind of a little bit, cynical towards some of the movie-related stuff and collecting in general and prices and all that. But, it feels like we're starting to have people jump back into the pool a little bit. And to get a record sale for a book like this, I think says a lot. I think says a lot because this is one of those ones that could have been sort of like the Eternals type of book where it just never sees its record highs once again after, say, the subpar movie. But what this has going for it is, unlike Eternals, this is, at the end of the day, still a great, amazing Spider-Man book with a very cool character in Morbius. And plus, it's a square-bound book. It's still tough to get at the top of the census. And as we already established here, I mean, there's only been 3 9.8 sales since the comic book boom for this. This is, the 4th 9.8 sale. I mean, maybe there's been other sales out there or Comiclink sales, but this is one that doesn't go on sale that much. So it didn't have the pullback because all it needs is still just 2 people who need their top of census, copy. So this one was still able to maintain that price, which I'm saying all that to set up our next book right here, which is ASM number 129, first appearance of the Punisher, that sold for $19,250 in a 9.8 grade with white pages. Beautiful book, but definitely, softer than what we have been seeing previously. What separates this one from the Morbius book is that you have 195 copies out there in the wild. Plus, you have a lot of high-grade versions of this book. Plus, you have other copies that are probably still getting added to the 9.8 census. This is one that is clearly much easier to get a 9.8 than that of ASM 101, being a square-bound book. And that's one of the reasons why this one had to have the pullback that it did, because this book was selling for, $15,000 back in 2020. So it went up all the way to $57,000 as a record price. And even where it is today at $20,000, I mean, in theory, it could still go back down to like 15 overall. I mean, maybe not, but that's always on the table, that, there's still a little bit of a COVID froth in these books. But either way, I think that that's kind of the interesting thing of the story. Even though Punisher is a much more popular character than Morbius, the demand side compared to the supply side of the equation, the supply side is just a lot higher for Punisher. So therefore, the prices just, are going to continue to equalize, unlike the Morbius one, because it's Morbin time. All right, next little thing I wanted to talk about here is kind of an interesting one. This is ASM 194 Newsstand Edition, first appearance of Black Cat, 9/8 white pages, selling for $2,400. And I'm not really concerned with, the values of where it sold relative to its previous sales. I'm concerned with this book selling next to this book right here, an ASM 194 Direct Edition, first appearance of Black Cat in a 9/8. And this one's selling for, what did it say? $1,940. So you got the Newsstand selling for $2,400. You got the Direct Edition selling for $1,940. On top of that, moving ahead, Daredevil 168, first appearance of Elektra, Newsstand, selling for $2,322, and Direct Edition selling for $2,123. So in all of these instances, or in both instances, I should say, the Newsstand version sold for more than the Direct Edition. And these are books that came out in 1979 and 1981, respectively. Now, when we've had conversations about newsstands versus directs, I think it's kind of well known now at this point that, generally speaking, newsstands didn't get more rare until around 1987, 88, 89, and then certainly into the 90s. But the reason I'm showing this to you guys and just kind of floating this is that I still think that there is a bias towards newsstands in the comic book market. Even if the market is wrong, I just think that people equate newsstand to quote unquote better or more valuable version. And for that reason, it's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy where the newsstands do in fact command a premium because people think that they command a premium. Now, it's also, been speculated that newsstands just were handled more poorly. So therefore they in fact are harder to get 9/8. I mean, I think sometimes that can be true, if you look at the census and you look at the examples of sales. But anyways, I just wanted to bring that up because I thought it was interesting that the newsstands in both of these instances sold for more. Speaking of selling for more, ASM 300, CGC 9/8, first full Venom, signed by Todd McFarlane with the Todd McFarlane label, went for $4,158, which of course, this is a book that at one point was selling for $6,000, $6,500. It's definitely had its correction, but $4,100 for the signed version compared to the regular version that sold for $3,000. So kind of an interesting thing to just sort of talk about, even though there's a ton of Todd McFarlane signatures out there, his signature still commands an $1,100 premium compared to the regular edition, especially when you have the nice Todd McFarlane label, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, it cost you about $125, $150 when Todd McFarlane did that big signing. So, hey, you added $900 to the value of your book by getting him to sign it. So that's pretty good overall. All right, next up here is Avengers number 25 in a CGC 9/6 Near Mint Plus. The classic Doctor Doom cover. I think this is the first time he goes against the Avengers. This is not the top of Census, but I wanted to quickly talk about it, just to see if, all the Doom books are getting the Doom bump after, RDJ is playing this character. And this one right here in the 9/6 selling for $4,300. Let's do a little price check. I already have it queued up. Last sale for this, $3,360. So, already pretty rare in the 9/6 at 13 copies on the Census, so even here, again, this book setting a new record in grade, selling for $4,300. Usually by now we'd be feeling the pullback of the COVID money for these, but I think, the RDJ effect is there. And for some of the Doom books, it's making its way to them. So I thought that was kind of interesting to talk about. Next up here, Avengers number 57, first appearance of Vision in a CGC 9/8. With off-white to white pages. Ooh, off-white to white pages. This one's selling for $22,250, which I think is fairly in line to where this book had been before, maybe a little bit softer. Last sale for this one was $18,000, but the prior record for that was $35,000 on a fixed price on eBay, and then a sale before that, $26,000. So I feel like this one kind of sold right in line. So it's kind of like what I'm talking about with the Avengers Doctor Doom book, where that one is still afloat, but this one is kind of having its pullback. Even though there's only 16 copies, it feels like the Doom effect kept that one afloat, whereas Vision Quest can't necessarily keep this one afloat, although it had off-white to white pages. Like, would that kill it for you guys if you bought this book and it had off-white to white pages? I am not a page snob, but when it comes to 9/8, I am a little bit. All right, next up here, we have Brave and the Bold, number 93, CGC 9/8, highest graded, 1 of 5. Neil Adams cover, selling for $5,150. This is the record for this book. I had to talk about it because it's a Bronze Age horror, and here we are, coming into September, getting ready. It's almost horror time. It's almost horror time for the comic book market. Very, very soon, we're going to be seeing the Bronze Age horror. We're going to be seeing the PCH books. We're going to be seeing all of them roll out. And if you're not somebody who had been buying all your horror books earlier in the year, this is going to be that time. This is going to be that time where the foam was going to start to come. But this one right here is one of my favorite Bronze Age horror ones because it's got the Batman crossover. It's the first time Batman actually crosses over into House of Mystery. So, if you're a speculator, there's also that factor as well. All right, last few books here before we wrap it up. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Hopefully you guys found this video interesting. I know it's a bit of a long one. We have Caliber Presents number 1, CGC 9/8. First appearance of the Crow, selling for $1,533. Still a lot of money, but not nearly the amount of money of what this thing was going for. As you guys can see, last few sales for this, $1,714 on eBay, a slash price of $26, $1,821. 26, 25, 21. It just feels like at one point this book was $3,600. Now it's really, really fallen off. And, I didn't see the Crow movie, but it doesn't seem like people thought it was that great, to say the least. So I guess this is probably a good as time as any to sell this book. And it feels like this one might definitely reset back down to its 2020 price very soon. All right, next up here we have Conan the Barbarian, number 1. First appearance and origin of Conan. Classic Barry Windsor Smith cover right there and interior art. And the CGC 9/8 selling for $7,650. What I think is so impressive about this sale is, while I don't necessarily think it's the ultimate record price for it, I think that this is a book that really has been able to kind of fight the correction tide of the comic market boom. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that there's just people that, are Barry Windsor Smith fans. This is a classic cover. It's a great book. It's not necessarily tied to a pop culture spec. It's just one that collectors like. And this right here is just another strong sale for it. And actually, this was one of the books that I talked about that has the biggest gap between its raw prices to its graded prices. So if you're somebody out there who can find, raw 9/8 candidates of this, this is definitely one that sells pretty well. Fantastic Four, number 1, CGC 9/0, selling for $244,000 with a CVA sticker. Of course, the first appearance of the Fantastic Four. Now, that isn't the record price for this one. It's a little bit softer, but I think that this one is selling in line to kind of the correction that we know was coming, where the April 2021 sale for this was $264,000. Then it went all the way to $420,000. Then it went to $288,000, then $234,000. So now it's kind of back up to $244,000. Excuse me, I got ahead of myself. Back up to $244,000. So I think that that's a pretty good sale overall for this book. And it'll be interesting to see later on in Heritage, that actually has a 9/8 of this book, what that 9/8 would sell for. Certainly a lot more than this one right here. Fantastic Four 48, first appearance of the Silver Surfer and first cameo of Galactus, $52,999. This was once selling at $100,000, $80,000, $90,000, $96,000, down to $66,000, down to $63,000. Now we're at $50,000, but that's still a big number relative to where it was before. I mean, this went from, $31,000 in 2018 to the next time to $100,000. So now it has to come back down. It has to correct back down to this $50,000 price tag, which seems to have done, and still a pretty strong sale. I mean, when you zoom out and think about it. All right, last book to talk about, Foom number 10, because I know that there's some Foom people out there that love this book. Highest graded, 1 of 9, selling for $17,000. CGC 9.8 white pages. Now, the record for this was $33,600. That was back in 2022. But this sale right here is the second highest of all time. You know, I think the $33,000 sale was probably a lot more than what should have been paid for that book. And $17,000 is still a very, very big number. You know, there's not too many out there. There's only 9 of them. So still cool to see that. Well, that's all for this video. That was me kind of pulling out a bunch of, books from this prior Comiclink featured auction. Of course, there was a lot of other amazing books that went for sale. Obviously, this was a really long video, so I can only talk about the ones that I thought were interesting to talk about. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. The auction is still going on for the next couple of days, but like I said, please don't bid on anything because I have a lot of books that I would like to add to my collection. Anyways, that's all for this one. What did you guys think about these sales? What do you guys think about comics right now in the market? Are you guys Morbius fans? When was the last Morbius book that you bought? Anyways, that's all I got. Like, comment, subscribe. See you on the next video.